promo code SportsAddict. Get 10% off whatever sports card you want in the entire First Round Collectibles store. They have an ongoing sale up to 50% off dozens and dozens of cards. And with our promo code SportsAddict, not only do you get 10% off of regular price items, but sales items as well. Hockey, football, basketball, baseball, wrestling, boxing, they have it all. So head to firstroundcollectibles.com today. Use promo code SportsAddict for 10% off regular priced and sales priced items. That's the number one, STRoundcollectibles.com. Promo code SportsAddict for 10% off. First Round Collectibles, sports cards for sports fans.
Yeah. Let's go. We just gotta go hard. I go the hardest. I bring the pain. Not what you used to. It's all part of the game. Yeah, I just gotta go hard. I just gotta go hard. Go hard. Yeah. Oh yeah, the beast back. Adrenaline pumping through my veins, can't relax. Original, I am not the same as these cats. I sting them if they never.
And welcome to Pucks Across Borders on a Saturday morning. One series remains. We're live on Sports Addict Live on X and YouTube, whether you're watching live or throughout the day. We appreciate you. 2 series clinched in the NHL last night. 1 series remains. We're going to talk about it all. Thrilling, double OT. I feel like the overtimes, maybe it's just me, but I feel like the overtimes have been at a minimum in the postseason thus far. 2 games in the Vancouver Oilers series missed overtime by like 30 seconds. And then the Panthers game last night, they score with 1:33 left. So that misses overtime. I feel like we've been deprived of some tense overtime action. But nevertheless, let's dive into it. But before we do, right next to me at the top of your screen, you read his work about the NFL on Gridiron Heroics. John, how are you feeling on a Saturday, bro? Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. We got 2 very compelling games from last night, very competitive games, but I'm kind of glad for minimal overtime because last night's game ended at 2 a.m. Eastern time or something.
Yes, it did.
That. So I could go for less of that. Luckily, in the conference finals, I don't think it'll be a problem. Guys, after today, if Vancouver takes care of business tonight, we might be off for a few days.
Yeah, man. I mean, to your point, I'm just thankful that it was a Friday night.
Yeah,
because I don't make smart decisions, and if that's going to 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night, I'm watching the whole thing. That's just kind of how it goes. So I'm glad it was on a Friday night and saved me from being an idiot. All right, at the bottom of your screen, I just called myself an idiot, and then I started going on. I thought, well, did I just call everyone that finished that game last night an idiot? Should I have said that? I don't know. You know, sometimes you just second guess the things you say. And when you talk for an hour every single day live, sometimes you say things that you wish you didn't. It's just inevitable. At the bottom of your screen, you read his gambling picks on Winners and Whiners. You read his work on Give Me Sport. Andre, how we feeling on a Saturday morning?
I'm also an idiot, so I'm glad you were able to call me an idiot. I have enough pride. I have too much pride to call myself an idiot, but I'm feeling pretty good. I don't know how I woke up with so much energy, considering I watched that whole thing. But I'm good to go.
Yeah.
What I look for is true fans.
It's funny because you say that you have too much pride to call yourself an idiot, and I have so much pride that I call myself an idiot in order to trick myself that I don't have pride or ego. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so arrogant that I like deprecate myself in order to trick myself that I don't care about myself. But the reality is I am the center of my universe. All right. Last night, 2 series clinching games. Let's start with the first. The Florida Panthers beat the Boston Bruins in Game 6, 2-1. Gustav Forsling scores with 33 left to finish off the game and the series. And the Florida Panthers have a date on Wednesday at Madison Square Garden with the New York Rangers. Andre, let's start with you, man. What was your big takeaway from that game last night?
The Bruins fought to their credit. And somehow one of the weakest shots Swayman faced all postseason is the one
I know
season. I think that just highlights the bigger point of their issue, which is they had no offense. If it was 2-1 Bruins, or if the Bruins scored multiple goals, that's only tying the game or that's cutting the lead to 1 or whatever. But instead, there was no margin for error at the one time their best player made one. The Panthers are relentless. They fought. That was honestly one of their less dominant games from that series, being completely honest. But they still managed to tie it in the second. Obviously, Forsling with the win in the third. Huge block shot before that. Last night was big on block shots, especially game-saving block shots. But I mean, nobody really expected this Bruins team to make it to the Eastern Conference Final. So the end result's not surprising. It's just the way it got there for Boston is tough, considering that goaltending carried them through 90% of this postseason. I would say, though, moving forward, they obviously have at least one great goaltender. They have what seems like a pretty good coach. They have leadership, so they're probably not going to go anywhere. But if a Boston fan, it's tough for that to be the shot that sends you home, especially in TD Garden. For the Panthers, they're right where they want to be again. Physical, gritty, tight group. Does what it takes to win. It should be a good series against the Rangers. We'll see what happens on Wednesday. You could argue that the two best teams in the East are the ones in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was between, if you had to say the Eastern Conference Finals was between any teams in the East, you'd probably pick Panthers, Rangers, or Kings being the two teams. So we got what we asked for.
Yeah, and from an analytical perspective, I'm very glad that this series isn't until Wednesday, because that gives me 4 days to figure out who I'm going to pick. Like, this is going to be a terrific series. I can't wait. I think we say this a lot, but it feels like Game 7 is written all over this series, but we'll see what happens. And to your point about the block shots, man, the Panthers, 23 block shots, Bruins, 24 block shots. And the Panthers had 28 total shots on goal. The Bruins had 23. And I think that is really, like, the Bruins ended up getting 23 shots on goal, getting one through. But I do think you're right about that, man. Like, this is kind of what this whole series kind of boils down to for the Bruins. And it feels like this is the game that they created. You saw it in round one with the Bruins and the Leafs, and you saw it. The first two games of this series, game 1 and 2, were both blowouts, one for each side. But other than that, it became very low event, very tight defensively, not a lot of shots, some big saves from both sides, but it was really next goal wins for the majority of this series. And if you're the Boston Bruins, man, I just feel like, by the time the postseason started, we forgot that they lost Bergeron and they lost Krejci, right? Because, like, at the end of last playoffs, those two guys retired, and we kind of thought, man, those are two huge pieces. What are the Bruins going to do? But then the Bruins went on to have a very good regular season, and I think we kind of forgot about that. But I think that they were exposed. Their depth was exposed in a huge way. Defensively, through 7 games, 6 games, so quick math, 13 games, Defensively, their goaltending and their defensive play really kept them in almost every game. But it was the offense that just couldn't do a thing. And listen, Jake DeBrusk is a good player. He's a good, solid depth piece. But when he's your leading point getter, when you have David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, that's a problem, right? And you kind of realize as the playoffs went on that you had Brad Marchand, who missed 2 games in this series. You have David Pastrnak, and then the drop-off to your next guy is just massive, and they just didn't have enough. They couldn't get enough shots, not to mention goals. And so when you lose 3 of your 4 losses by 1 goal, and Jeremy Swayman was phenomenal after getting pulled in game 2, was it? I believe 2. Swayman was terrific. And with regards to the game yesterday, you're absolutely right, man. Like, I thought Boston held in there, but as soon as Lundell scored in that second period, I thought the Panthers, like, you could feel the momentum just completely shifting. And the Panthers ended up, it felt like the Panthers were going to win that game, and you felt like it might go to overtime, but ultimately they got the job done. From the Panthers' perspective, I'm just really impressed with how this team wins games, man. Like we saw in Tampa Bay, they won some high-scoring games, fast-paced, physical games. Against Boston, take away those first 2 games, not a lot of ice, really tight checking, really tight defensively, and they found a way to get the job done and do what they had to do. So to me, this Florida Panthers team, a lot like the New York Rangers, can win any way they need to. And I think the 2 right teams made it through. I think we all felt like with the path that the Panthers had, they were going to get to the conference finals. Now, I don't know if John did, but I know Andre and I, we picked the Tampa Bay Lightning to win that first round. So, boy, are our faces red this morning. But it's going to be a really, really great Eastern Conference matchup, and the Panthers are going to try to get through to their second straight Stanley Cup Finals. John, what did you see last night?
I'll add, I also picked the Lightning to win the first round.
You did too, okay.
I think I picked them to make the conference finals too. So yeah, that didn't age well.
Oh, so you're way more wrong than we are. That makes me feel better.
I think I felt like the winner of Florida Tampa was going to make the Eastern Conference Finals.
Fair.
No matter what.
Yeah,
but
fair.
Yeah, Florida, I think I had the same concern with them as I did the Canucks before the playoffs started, where they weren't playing consistently well near the end of the year. But I think I should have seen Florida was starting to get back on track a little faster. And at their best, like in February, most people considered Florida the best team in the league. It was just a matter of if they could turn that back on for the Stanley Cup playoffs, because we knew what they were capable of at their best. I would agree that the right 2 teams made it in the East. I think the Canes are like the only team really close to these 2. And we saw that play out in the Rangers-Canes series. But I would say in the East, it seems like a rare year that maybe, I swear, in the last 5 years or so, outside of maybe 2022 when the Lightning and Avs made the final, it feels like we're really getting chalked this year. Like most years, we really don't get that. Besides, like 2022 is the only notable year that stands out recently. In this series, inevitable is the word I would use to describe it. With the Florida Panthers, I felt like I swear I think of Thanos snapping his finger. They felt like they were inevitable because you know the old saying, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
Yeah,
well, that doesn't really apply to the Florida Panthers. They got punched in the mouth a couple of times by the Boston Bruins, and they got right back up. Boston didn't have an answer for that. And whereas on the contrary, when Florida punched Boston in the mouth, they couldn't get back up. Game 4 and Game 6, I think, are the most notable examples of this, where I felt like despite Florida being down by a goal, I still felt very confident they were going to find a way to win the game. Like game 4, we saw how that played out, and they were relentless on Swayman. Well, I agree with Andre. This is probably the least convincing win of the series in game 6 for Florida. They still won the game, and I think they did enough to win the game where, you know how Boston got nearly 30 shots on goal against Florida in game 5. I noticed in the third period they didn't even have 20 shots on Bobrovsky. So I'm like, yeah, Florida's got this, even though they're not looking the best. They're limiting Boston. They're doing just enough to win. And you're right, Boston lacks the scoring. And I think before the playoffs, I would have agreed with your take about forgetting about Patrice and Krejci. But I think in the playoffs, I don't exactly agree with that opinion because I feel like with the Bruins, something was clearly missing in the playoffs, even back in the first round. And I'm not saying Patrice and Krejci could have filled that on their own, but I think at the very least, it's clear they need more depth.
Oh, yeah. I mean, sorry to cut you off, but that was my point, is that, like, you could notice them missing way more in the playoffs than you could in the regular season.
Oh, my bad. I think I might have misunderstood that a bit. Yeah, and that's pretty... Oh, in that case, then, yeah, I think we see that the same way then.
Yeah.
Where in the regular season, I kind of forgot about it because their younger players were stepping up too. But playoffs, you definitely noticed the depth compared to the elite teams. Yeah, Florida just felt inevitable. I think games 4 and game 6 were really important for them because Boston came out and fought in those games. And Florida was able to absorb a punch to the face in the early in the game on both times and still come back and win. It felt like they just leaned on Boston until they finally pushed them over in the third period in each of those games. So I'm going to be interested to see like how they do against the Rangers. This is a very early take on the Eastern Conference Finals, but I truly believe whoever wins the Eastern Conference wins the Cup.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna really have fun with that when we find out who wins, like who's in the conference
next week on that.
Yeah, that's gonna be a really fun conversation because I don't know, man, and that's a perfect segue because these teams in the West, dude, like I feel for Colorado. I know that the Nikushkin thing happened earlier in the week, and it's kind of been said and all that, but I really do feel for Colorado. Last night it was clear. Like, so to set this up, Dallas Stars, if you don't know, Dallas Stars win in double overtime last night. Thought they won in the first overtime, but it ended up needing to be in the second overtime. And by the end of that game, both teams were just gassed, man. Like nobody had any energy. I was joking with you guys before the show that I think there was like the over-under of like icings, I think was like, it had to have been over 8.5 like total icings in that second overtime period. Matt Duchene also, like, what a great moment for him, man. I feel like that guy has just been getting the brunt of just getting bought out and not really fitting anywhere. And starting last year and into this year, he's really found a rejuvenation for his career in Dallas. Was called for goaltender interference on what we thought was the game-winning goal. We don't have to spend a bunch of time on this because Dallas ended up winning the game, so it kind of is irrelevant. But this is the age-old question that comes up every single postseason and multiple times in the regular season. What in the world is goaltender interference? I couldn't really believe the contact was made outside of the crease. I don't know. That was kind of weird to me. That not kind of weird. That was very weird to me. But ultimately, Dallas is a very good team. They played better than Colorado did last night. I thought Colorado played really well. I thought Georgie, for all like the flack that we give him, I thought he was phenomenal last night. Like, I thought Georgie played out of his mind last night. Like, statistically, I don't know if that was his best game of the postseason. I'm sure you could do some deep dives into the stats and numbers, but with my eyeballs, like, that was the best game that I can remember watching him play this postseason. Like, I thought he was terrific last night. But Dallas is just too much. And I think what really, really stands out to me and why I brought up Nichushkin is because as those overtime periods go on, the more you have to roll 4 lines, right? Like, you can't just put out your top guys. Like, I believe going into the second overtime, Cale Makar already had 34 minutes, right? And so did McKinnon, and all the top guys for Dallas already were in the 30s. And you can't just run 2 lines when you're in double overtime. Like, you gotta roll your whole crew. And I thought that's where the depth of Dallas really, really showed itself. And Matt Duchene, no disrespect to Matt Duchene, but he's not Wyatt Johnston. He's not even Jamie Benn. He's not Robertson. You needed your depth pieces to get the job done last night, and Colorado just didn't have it. So I think the right team won. If Colorado won and we had a game 7, that would have fit the script too. But I think Dallas was just a better team and the deeper team all way along. And just to wrap this up, like I said, when we found out about Valerie Nichushkin and that whole situation, we can talk about the off-ice impact of that. We can talk about emotionally how it kind of affected the group. We can talk about all that, and it is very relevant. But at the bottom line, he was their leading scorer, and you want to be sensitive to the situation, but he let the team down in this situation, and they needed him out there. And you hope the guy gets better, and all that stuff is absolutely true. But that double overtime, the lack of depth from Colorado really, really showed itself, and ultimately Dallas won. And I shouted out Georgie Ottinger too, man. He had himself a game last night. Just some huge saves down the stretch. And Dallas moves on. And we may find out who they play tonight, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. John, what did you see in that game last night? Am I frozen here, John?
Man down. No.
Oh, man down. All right. Andre, we'll go to you first then, man. What did you see in that game last night?
I saw 2 goalies that just didn't want to go home more than anything.
For real.
A lot of fantastic saves in those overtimes at the end of those games. So kudos to Andre, kudos to Georgie. It was a very good show in the late hours of the night. I don't even think Dallas played better. Dallas was the better team, 100%. But I think that game could have ended either way, honestly. It was just about who was going to blink first, who was going to get that perfect opportunity first. And it just happened to be the Stars. That was a phenomenal game. It was just, Avs, I don't want to go home. Stars, I'm better than you. Just clashing, butting heads for, Lord, I can't even count that high. 80-something minutes, at least over 80 minutes. I know that's one overtime. So what a treat it was. If you're Colorado, you lost a huge piece at the worst time. His career with the team is probably done, unfortunately. Obviously, what he probably needs is bigger than that. But
of course,
moving forward, they still have everything to be one of the most dangerous teams in the West for years to come. So didn't get it done this year, but you got a cup recently. You're going to be in contention. as long as McKinnon and Makar are there at the very least. So nothing to panic about, nothing to be ashamed about. Your window's still open. But it would have been nice to get that game 7, and you were right there.
I know.
As for Dallas, best team in the West. They keep very quietly just winning games and playing a complete, like you talk about how the Panthers and the Rangers can win in any way. I feel like the Stars have quietly been that all year too. So, Andre came up with the saves he needed to. The defense was blocked a ton of shots, put their body on the line a ton. And their offense was also one of the highest scoring in the league. So top seed in that conference also advanced, and it's really not a surprise, even though they didn't get the attention they were probably deserved for the regular season.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, we said this all year long. If the Dallas Stars are playing, bet the over. And I was just really impressed with how in the playoffs, when the game shrinks, they still found a way to get it done, even when they didn't score 3, 4, 5 goals, right? For the first half of this series, that's how they were winning games. And to close it out, they had to win low-scoring defensive contests, and they got the job done. John, you're back, bro. What'd you see in that game last night?
Apologize before. Had a little technical difficulties there. Thankfully, Andre was ready to go in the meantime. So last night's dogfight is the way I would describe Game 6 of that series, which was an interesting change of pace because I did not feel like the earlier games in the series were like that at all. Last night felt like a physical dogfight, next goal wins type of game, which seemed kind of rare in this series, whereas the other games felt like a track meet and the momentum came in spurts, whereas it seemed like it was going back and forth for a while last night. But I did feel like overtime Dallas had all the momentum, and if things were going entirely right for Dallas, except that ridiculous goal that got waved off call, which I would have had a bigger rant about this if Dallas had not won the game, but I'll just keep this short and say, to me, that was a goal. And we could have saved ourselves the whole period of overtime there because Dallas ended up winning the game anyway, especially for us East Coast people. So for the entire series, I'll agree with you guys in that Dallas is finding more than one way to win games. Like, they've won a decent amount of lower scoring games this year. Even back in the first round against Vegas, I felt like they were more capable of that than Colorado. I have to give Mark credit. He called this from the beginning of this series that Dallas had the depth and had the defense that Colorado just didn't. He was spot on. I thought Colorado could outscore their way through a round, but I think it ended up biting them in the butt here. Of course, losing a guy the way they did that scored 9 goals in the playoffs in, like, I want to say 8 games, that doesn't help at all. And like you guys said this already, but we can only hope he gets the help he needs. So for Colorado, like, I think after the first round dominating a team like Winnipeg, I think I got overly convinced they can do that against anybody because Winnipeg was such a strong goaltending defensive team in the regular season. What I think bit Colorado was that Dallas also has the offense to back it up. So, like, Dallas is a stronger defensive team. I would argue the better goaltending team. Despite Gorgiev, I don't know if I'm saying that right. He probably had his best game of the series last night for Colorado.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, losing effort, unfortunately for him, but I do think he deserves some credit for keeping the Abs in as long as he did in Game 6. Abs, I felt like, were a firecracker offensively, but Dallas, credit to them, they were able to shut him down half the series. And Dallas, I know they're a great road team, but I'm still very impressed they were able to win all 3 games on the road against Colorado in this series. That takes a lot of talent and a lot of adversity to overcome. One more thing about this series, just kind of a side note, and this is just something I noticed as a Devils fan, or I just feel like I need to mention. So during the handshake last night, one moment I saw was when Peter DeBoer and Zach Parise got to each other. They were definitely talking for a little bit, and DeBoer was in his ear. I don't know what he said to him exactly, but I can imagine there were strong words there because I believe Zach Parise is retiring now, and that was his last game. And I just want to give a shout out to him because I have a soft spot for the guy as a Devils fan. 2012, my guy. He was like the leader of that team that made the final with Peter DeBoer as his head coach. So that's a throwback for me. And I like seeing that moment between those two guys because DeBoer, unfortunately he couldn't make it work in New Jersey not much longer after 2012. But man, has he had a successful run in the NHL since then? Like, with the Devils, he made the Stanley Cup final. He led that Sharks team to the Stanley Cup final against Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, with Crosby and Kessel, that was just a lot to overcome. And even since then, like, he's been the head coach of Vegas, now the head coach of Dallas, trying to make a run. I'm going to be interested to see what DeBoer can do if he can finally get over the hump because he's had so many conference finals and Stanley Cup final appearances. I feel like he's due to get something bigger. He's a great coach, and I'm glad he had that moment with one of his former players. And Parise, Devils fans don't love the way he left, but I think looking at it in hindsight, definitely can understand why he left to go home. And things were falling apart for the Devils anyway after that. But Parise, just great overall player, had a great career, and felt like he deserved his roses.
Yeah. Great point by you, man. That's a great point with Zach Parise. I completely forgot about that. And look at you with the Pete DeBoer knowledge. This just shows to the coaching carousel.
Honestly.
Well, this just shows the coaching carousel in the National Hockey League. I forgot that he coached the Devils, and I forgot he coached the Sharks. I feel like coaches change so much. I completely forgot he was a part of either of those situations, but you're absolutely right. And the guy's never lost a game 7, right? So if Colorado,
that's crazy too. He's like 8-0 in game 7s.
I know. So if Colorado did get through last night, then who knows what that would have been with Pete DeBoer's history, right? The other part that you mentioned with regards to us on the East Coast being thankful the game ended when it did. At the end of the TNT broadcast, they were like, the clock just struck midnight here in Colorado. And I was like, because that was my thought going into the second overtime was like, yo, these fans are still fired up. Like, I'm falling asleep here. And I completely forgot that it's like 2-hour time difference out there. But yeah, great words on Zach Parise. Absolutely wonderful career. And this is a conversation for the off season, but his name's added to the list. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he never won a cup, correct?
No.
So
about the closest he came.
Right. So add his name to the list of incredible potential Hall of Fame players who never won a Stanley Cup, right? So that's an interesting conversation that we can have at another day. All right, one game to break down on the ice tonight, and it is in Edmonton, Game 6. The Oilers try to stay alive tonight, stave elimination, if you will. I only have a few more weeks that I can say that word, so I'm going to get it in while I can. The Vancouver Canucks, guys, what are we doing? What are we doing? The Vancouver Canucks plus 160 in Edmonton. The Oilers minus 192. Minus 192 are the Edmonton Oilers. Oh man, I could rant on this. I could do this show by myself and just rant on this for an hour, and we could fill time that way. The over is six at minus 118. The under is minus 102. Plus 1.5 for the Canucks is minus 155. Minus 1.5 for the Oilers is plus 130. I have watched, like you guys, every minute of this series, and the Oilers are not minus 192 favorites. They're just not. Andre, we'll start with you. Am I wrong? Like, should the Oilers be favored by minus 192? What are we doing?
No, I'm right there with you. The Oilers, good team. Oilers could very easily force a game 7. The way the series is going, they probably will force a game 7. There's no way I'm betting the Oilers minus 192. There's no way I'm taking the Oilers 60-minute line or minus 1.5. Not with the way this series has gone. It's going to be down to the wire. Probably going to go to overtime like the last 2 games were supposed to, but didn't. And if I'm being honest, Vancouver has the legs. They have the talent, cohesion. They're playing better. I know they're injured, specifically in net, Thatcher Demko. But the fact that they've been underdogs this entire series, the fact that they're 160 now, they were 140 the other day, it's ridiculous. It's inaccurate. It's not what has been happening on the ice. Game 5 was their best game of the series by far. Might have been their best game of the entire postseason. I don't think they're going to lose that momentum. Even if they lose the game, it'll be because McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman just put the Oilers on their back. It's because they manufacture 3 or 4 goals, and that's enough to win. It won't be because the Canucks play poorly, I would think. So I'm taking that plus 160.
Mm-hmm.
I'm riding it all the way to the bank. Just, they've been the better team. I understand what Vegas is doing, but it's wrong.
Yeah, like, this is the thing, dude. Like, I've been saying this whole series. We all have. Like, I understand how they get their odds, okay? It's all mathematical and analytical, and it's all data-driven. I get it. Or data-driven. I watch Star Trek, so, Commander Data, and it confuses me on if I say data or data. I don't know. But anyway, I digress entirely. I know how they come up with these odds, but it's just wrong. Like, we watch these games every single night. Like, I just don't understand how it can happen. But before I go on my epic rant, I've been talking for half the show. So, John, what do you feel about this game 6 tonight? Will there be a game 7?
For the sake of symmetry in the NHL, I feel like it's going to wrap up tonight, right? Like, all these teams that have had a chance to close out in game 6 have done so, starting with Andre's boys, the Rangers, on Thursday night in comeback fashion. And last night, Florida and Dallas both closed out. Granted, it took a long time for one of them to close out. They both closed out when they needed to, and I think it happens again tonight. I don't think my opinion has changed from the day after game 5, saying that I think Edmonton has just run out of tape to put on this. Like, I don't know how many more tricks they have up their sleeve to try to throw Vancouver off guard, because that's what I think they're doing to extend this series, to be honest. And Vancouver, I said this after game 5, they seem to finally figure out how to put some pressure on a goaltender, getting 35 shots the other night. I think if they have remotely the same game they did in game 5, they win the series. And I haven't read reports this morning or anything. I'll be surprised if Demko starts tonight, just because I felt like once Vancouver won game 5, I felt like they had the flexibility to wait with Demko. Like, unless he, like Mark said the other day, unless he was like 1,000% ready. I feel like now Vancouver has the flexibility and the privilege of like not needing 100% Demko, or not needing Demko in an emergency. They have a little room to work with. And I think Silovs has kind of earned a game 6 start too. He's playing really well. He only allowed 2 goals in game 5, so he seems to only be getting better. I'll take the plus 160 money all day. I think I'm going to stay away from the total because I don't know what Edmonton team I'm getting in this game. I mean, I feel confident Vancouver will score probably 4 goals tonight, but I'm not sure what I'm getting from Edmonton here. So I'm going to take Vancouver plus 160. Get perfect balance in the NHL and have all 4 of these series wrapped up in 6 games.
A really fun long shot. So first of all, Coach Tocchet said yesterday, Thatcher Demko playing this weekend would be a long shot. We don't know who is starting for the game tonight, but he did say that yesterday that his exact words were it would be a stretch if Demko started this weekend. So we know that. As far as Edmonton goes, no goaltender has been named. Elliot Friedman, who is a very, very well-respected Canadian hockey analyst. I know both you guys follow Elliot Friedman's work. He thought last night, that the Oilers should start Skinner, which I don't disagree with Friedman very often, but I couldn't disagree more. Like Skinner, like I said all year, he's had a phenomenal year. But if we're talking strictly postseason, Pickard's given them Pickard. There I go on my Star Trek talk again. Pickard, Pickard has given them a better chance to win in this series. That's just the way it is. Is he the better goaltender? I would say, generally speaking, no. But in a round 2 vacuum, yes. So I wouldn't start Skinner. That's my opinion. Now, a fun long shot bet, gentlemen. Considering the Vancouver Canucks path to where they are right now, if they win tonight and move on to the conference finals, find a way to beat Dallas, if Thatcher Demko is never right and never gets back in the net, Archers, she loves me not, or she loves me, yeah. Plus 8,000 for the Conn Smythe. I know it sounds ridiculous. But if they win the Stanley Cup and he's their goaltender, tell me another player on Vancouver who should get the Conn Smythe. I don't think there is another guy. I think it's him as of right now. I know that's like a month away, and I know it's plus 8,000 and it's crazy talk. But I'm just saying, if you got $10 and you want to sprinkle on a long shot Conn Smythe win, I'm not arguing against that plus 8,000 for Shelovs. I think that's, I don't know. I think that's a worthwhile long shot. But with regards to the game tonight, it doesn't sit right in my stomach. It makes me feel very awkward. I actually think I feel a little nauseous. But actually, you know what? Andre agreed with John too. I was going to say I agree with John, but Andre did too. So now I'm okay. Now all is right with the world. But I'm taking Vancouver to win tonight too, man. Like I just think the Canucks have done a really good job at neutralizing McDavid. Draisaitl has had his moments. But apart from game 2, McDavid just has not been himself. This is the time of year when a superstar player doesn't play like a superstar. We all wonder, is he healthy? What's wrong with McDavid? I mean, he could be hurt, but I also just think that the Canucks have done a terrific job just neutralizing him and making the Oilers beat them a different way. And there's no reason for me, especially with getting Soucy back the last game from his 1-game suspension, like there's no reason for me to think that the Canucks can't close this out. Yes, the Oilers are a very good team, but we have seen throughout this series, they are way more top heavy than we talked about going into this round. The Canucks have exposed a depth problem with the Oilers. And from a Canucks side of things, their big boys are scoring, yes, but they got other guys scoring too, man. Dakota Joshua is doing his thing. Garland has had his moments. Like, they have superstar players, EP40, who have not pulled their weight, and they're still winning games. I just think that Vancouver found the secret sauce to beat the Oilers, and I think with the way Shelovs has been playing and with the way that this Canucks team has been defending, I think that this game is absolutely theirs for the taking. The only thing that makes me a little bit skeptical on the Canucks is the Oilers went 0 for 5 on the power play last game. Their power play has puked all over themselves this series, which is the trademark for this Oilers team. As good as McDavid is, and Draisaitl is, and Hyman is, and yes, 5-on-5 they do a lot. Their magic is in their power play. They have a historically incredible power play. Over the last 2 seasons, I believe, you can fact check me here, but over the last 2 seasons, they have the best power play in the history of the NHL. And they have not been able to get the job done with the man advantage so far. And that's just the bottom line here. So I'm taking Vancouver plus 160. To your point, Andre, about going to overtime, a draw. Oh, I had it here. I think I saw plus 330 for a draw. Plus 330 for a draw. So that's a fun long shot bet. I like Vancouver plus 160. I also, and I know I just recommended a potential draw play, but if you got a nice, decent sized bankroll, I'm not scared of that 60-minute line either. Plus 230. I really like Vancouver money tonight, man. And like I've said all series long, this is just one of those bets. If it loses, it loses. But Vancouver are not plus 160 dogs. They're just not. So if the books are going to give you those odds, take it and just roll with whatever happens. I like the Canucks to win tonight. All right, let's move on to our best bets brought to you by First Round Collectibles. Right now with our promo code Sports Addict, get 10% off every sports card in the First Round Collectibles store. They have an ongoing sale up to 50% off. And with our promo code Sports Addict, not only do you get 10% off of regular priced items, but sales items as well. Go to firstroundcollectibles.com today. That's the number 1, STRoundcollectibles.com. First Round Collectibles, sports cards for sports fans. Andre, what's your best bet in the lone game in the NHL tonight?
Yeah. Part of me just wants to take a prop to get it out the way, but the other part of me is just going to rip the Band-Aid off. Canucks plus 160. They're in the series.
Love it. Absolutely love it. John, what about you?
This is a good question, actually. I think I'm gonna do a weird move and fade McDavid here. Looking at some of these props, under 1.5 points. I don't think the Oilers do a lot tonight.
What's that at? What's the odds on that?
On DraftKings, I'm seeing it at plus 124.
Ooh.
I don't think the Oilers do a lot tonight. I'm gonna fade them.
Okay.
I like that one.
I love the Stones. As much as we've been talking about McDavid, he's still McDavid. And John, you impressed me, man. My opinion of you, not that it was awful before, but it's grown significantly. I'm really proud of you. So I'm gonna put the bet. I really want to go. I really want to go to a prop side of this as well, John. I think out of all three of us, I think I would get a prop, Andre would get a prop, and I think John would be one of the last guys we'd expect to get a prop, although you've been on the goalie props the last few days this past week.
Missed it last night, though.
Oh, barely, though, bro. You were right there, man. You were right there. I think I'm going to skip a prop. I'm going to give that to John. Congratulations. Wonderful choice. I think I'm going to go with the under here. The over has been at least for me, we've really felt that every game was going to go over. The first 3 games of the series did, but the last 2 games of this series, games 4 and 5, both finished with a total of 3-2, and both of those fifth and final goals were with 40 seconds or less left in the hockey game. I know that fifth goal would have eventually been in overtime. I'm just saying within 60 minutes, the last two games, not a lot there as far as goal scoring goes. I think tonight is a classic elimination game. Last night, elimination game, 2-1. Last night, elimination game, 2-1. The Rangers, Carolina, elimination game, that game was 3-1. And, Kreider heroics and the New York Rangers magic made that game an 8-goal game. But for the most part, these elimination games are really tightly contested. I would love to go through every elimination game so far this postseason. And I would imagine that the far majority or vast majority, is that proper English, is the under. So I'm taking it under here. Minus, what did I have it at here? Minus 102 for under 6.
Well, I must say, John, you win today. That's my favorite bet of today's best bets segment. McDavid under 1.5 points. Genuinely, I think that's awesome, and I think it's going to hit. Canucks money line is plus 160. McDavid under 1.5 points is plus 124. Under 6 goals is minus 102. That 3-leg same game parlay is plus 435.
Absolutely love it. And boys, if the Canucks win, we'll talk. We do a show tomorrow, do a show Monday, Tuesday. Do we wait till Wednesday? I don't know. Who knows? We've had a grind every day, Monday to Friday since October. We have been working hard, and it is coming down to an end, boys. We are getting down to the final stretch. Everybody watching today, thank you. Whether you're watching live or later in the day, we appreciate you. First Round Collectibles, we appreciate you. Use promo code SportsAddict for 10% off every card in the First Round Collectibles store. John, Andre, great job today. Everybody, enjoy the games tonight. Good luck on your bet, and we'll see you in the future. Maybe we got a game to break down and a game to preview. Maybe we're off to the conference finals. We'll find out. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching.